All right, so get ready, because today we're going to do a deep dive
Fun.
into some really interesting territory. We're looking at the modern right wing, their hopes and frustrations, and how they're dealing with, this whole world of like tech and economic power.
Yeah, it's a wild world out there.
It is, and we're doing it all through this,
Looking glass.
well, yeah, through the lens of this document. It's
Okay.
called Peasant Revolts.
Peasant Revolts. That's evocative.
It is.
Gets you thinking.
Yeah, and it really gets to the heart of this question, like, can you actually gain influence within a system
Yeah.
if, like, your ideology clashes with it?
At a fundamental level.
Yeah.
It's a big question.
It is. And what I find so fascinating about this source is how it highlights this tension
Okay.
between wanting, like, huge change,
Mm-hmm.
but also fearing the instability and potential chaos
Yeah.
of something like a revolution.
Yeah, it's like you want things to be different, but you don't want to break everything
Exactly.
in the process.
It's almost like walking a tightrope.
It is. Yeah, it's a tough balance.
And they use this Elon
Right.
Musk
Told you
as
that.
this really interesting case study to illustrate all these points.
Yeah. How so?
Specifically, how his recent actions, particularly around like immigration in the tech sector, have just sparked these like passionate and sometimes very divided reactions online.
Right. Especially those communities that are leaning right.
Yeah. Okay, so let's kind of unpack this a bit.
Okay, let's do it.
The source starts off by reflecting on Donald Trump's presidency,
Okay.
the initial hopes, the eventual disappointments.
Yeah, a roller coaster of emotions there.
Yeah.
For a lot of people.
All viewed through this specific right-wing perspective.
Okay, so tell me about that.
So the author is arguing
Mm-hmm.
that even if someone like Trump
Yeah.
wasn't perfectly aligned
Right.
with their views
On every single issue.
on every issue,
Yeah.
there was still this sense that having him in office might at least slow down some of the trends they saw as harmful.
Right, like putting on the brakes.
Yes.
Even if you're not totally sure where you want to go next.
Exactly.
I like that analogy. It's
Yeah.
good.
And that leads into this whole client to power strategy.
Client to power? What is that?
So instead of trying to grab the reins directly,
Mhm.
you become so valuable
Okay.
to those in power
Yeah.
that they have to at least listen to your concerns.
Okay, I see.
It's like becoming the indispensable advisor, the
Right.
person they can't ignore, even if they don't always agree with you.
Yeah. They need you. They rely on you.
Yeah,
But the question is, does that actually lead to meaningful change?
right.
Or do you just kind of compromise too much along the way?
Exactly.
That's a slippery slope.
It is, and that's where this whole Musk situation becomes this
Mhm.
fascinating example
Okay.
of how this strategy can backfire.
Just so?
Because the source dives into his comments about needing more high-skilled immigrants, especially from India, and how that collided head-on with his remarks
Yep.
about American workers.
Uh-oh.
So he essentially implied that American workers lacked the skills and drive needed for these high-tech jobs,
Oh, boy.
which understandably didn't sit well with a lot of people.
No, I can imagine.
And this is where understanding the H-1B visa program becomes really crucial.
Okay, why is that?
It's not just some dry policy detail.
Yeah.
It gets to the heart of this whole debate
Explain it to me.
because it allows companies to hire foreign workers
Yeah.
for specialized roles
All right.
when they say they can't find qualified Americans, right?
Yeah.
But it's been this lightning rod
Yeah.
for controversy for years,
Especially in the tech world,
especially in the tech
which
world.
is already so globalized.
Exactly. And the source dives into the very specific criticisms that
Right.
came from the right.
Right.
So not just generalized outrage,
Mhm.
but concerns about American workers being displaced by people willing to work for less,
Right.
potentially lowering wages across the board.
Yeah, that's a big fear for a lot of people.
It is. So it taps into these deep economic anxieties,
Right.
especially for folks who might already be feeling left behind in this
Yeah.
rapidly changing economy.
Absolutely.
It's not just about immigration.
Right.
It's about livelihoods
Yeah.
and the future.
Yeah. Their future, their family's future.
And the source also brings up concerns about exploitation.
Exploitation, how so?
The idea that because these foreign workers' visas are often tied to their employers, they might be more vulnerable to pressure,
Right.
longer hours, or conditions they wouldn't accept otherwise.
That makes sense.
So it creates this power imbalance.
Right.
And the source argues it could lead to a race to the bottom.
Where everybody loses.
Yeah.
Nobody wins in that situation.
And then there's this added layer of worry
Okay.
about cultural and ethical clashes.
Interesting.
The author even mentions a lecture by an Indian man that really solidified their viewpoint on this.
Oh, wow.
They don't go into detail about what exactly was said,
Right.
but it clearly left a mark and raised some red flags for them
I see.
about potential conflicts down the line.
So we're not just talking about economic impacts, but deeper cultural shifts as well.
Exactly. And that makes the backlash against Musk even more interesting.
Oh, yeah.
It's like this perfect storm of anxieties and frustration.
All colliding at once.
Colliding, yeah.
So it sounds like it gets to this question. Was Musk ever really an ally
Right.
to this segment of the right?
Did his wealth and influence make him a target?
Or was it more about feeling betrayed?
Yes.
Like someone they thought they could trust turned on them?
And that's where the source uses this really powerful phrase,
Okay, tell me.
Peasants Revolt.
Peasants Revolt.
Wow. It's not just about disagreement.
Right.
It's about this emotional reaction to feeling ignored, even looked down on
Right.
by someone you thought was on your side.
You thought you were in the same team.
Yeah, it speaks to this deeper power dynamic
Yeah.
that goes beyond just policy debates.
Right. You're not just disagreeing. You feel like you've been wronged
Exactly.
on a fundamental level.
And this feeds directly into their argument
Okay.
about the limits of corporate power.
Okay.
Even someone like Musk, with all his resources,
Right. All his money, all his influence.
is still operating within a system
Yeah.
that might be fundamentally opposed to certain right-wing goals.
I see. So no matter how much power you have, you're still playing by someone else's rules.
It's like trying to swim upstream
Right.
against a current that's constantly pushing you back.
Yeah, you're fighting a losing battle.
So how do you even begin to navigate that?
That's a good question.
Especially if you believe, as the source seems to,
Yeah.
that the system itself is rigged against you.
Right. If you feel like the game is unfair, how do you even play?
Where do you even start?
That's what we need to figure out.
Yeah. So that's something we're going to delve into more deeply
Looking forward to it.
in the next part of this deep dive.
Can't wait.
But for now, we're going to take a quick break.
Sounds good. So where do we start?
Well, the source seems to advocate for a more nuanced approach.
Okay.
It's not about, like, storming the castle.
Right.
It's about finding those strategic pressure points,
Okay.
building alliances, proving your value within the system.
So it's more like a long game of chess.
Yeah,
Every move has to be carefully considered.
exactly. But if you believe the game itself is unfair,
Right.
how do you play without compromising your principles?
Yeah, that's the real dilemma. And the source doesn't offer any easy solutions.
Right.
But it does caution against like outright rejection or rebellion.
Okay.
Suggesting those tactics might be counterproductive.
I see.
It's more about finding those subtle ways
Okay.
to exert influence, shifting the conversation little by little.
Like steering a massive ship.
Exactly. You're not going to turn it around on a dime.
Right. It takes time.
It does.
So picking your battles,
Yeah.
knowing when to hold firm and when to compromise,
Mm-hmm.
it takes a certain level of pragmatism.
Absolutely. And the source really emphasizes patience.
Patience.
Yeah, real change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's a slow and often frustrating process.
You have to be willing to play the long game,
Yeah.
even when it feels like you're making little progress.
That's hard, though.
It is. And the source uses Musk as an example
Okay.
of how aligning yourself with the wrong people
Right.
can actually set you back.
Yeah, it's like hitching your wagon to a star. That turns out to be a dud.
Exactly.
Not very bright.
So they're arguing that putting your faith in someone who doesn't truly share your values, no matter how powerful they seem,
Yeah.
is ultimately a losing strategy.
Right. It can create this false sense of hope
Yeah.
that ultimately leads to disillusionment and division.
So how do you even identify the right allies?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right. How do you separate
Yeah.
those who genuinely share your values from those who are just looking for like a temporary alliance of convenience?
Right. Just using you to get what they want.
Exactly.
It requires real discernment.
Discernment.
Yeah. Looking beyond those like surface level agreements.
Right.
And really understanding someone's core motivations.
So they're underlying principles.
Yeah. What are their true loyalties?
It's not always easy to figure out.
No, especially in politics.
Especially in the world of politics.
Where everything is so carefully packaged and presented?
It's all about the image.
It is, yeah.
The source also touched on this idea of
Oh.
the circulation of elites.
Circulation of elites?
Which I found really interesting.
Okay, what is that?
It's like acknowledging that power is constantly in flux,
Okay.
with new players emerging
Yeah.
and old ones fading away.
So it's not a static thing.
Yeah.
It's always changing.
Exactly. And the author seems to be suggesting that America is in the midst of this political realignment.
A realignment.
Yeah, and it creates opportunities for groups like the right
It's okay.
to gain influence in ways they couldn't before.
I see. So it's about recognizing those shifts
Yes.
and capitalizing on them.
Understanding who's on the rise,
Mm-hmm.
who's losing their grip,
Right.
and where the potential alliances might lie.
It's all about timing.
It is.
Yeah.
But it also requires flexibility, right?
Flexibility.
The ability to adapt to these changing circumstances
Mm-hmm.
and adjust your strategies accordingly.
So what worked yesterday
Yeah,
might not work tomorrow.
exactly.
You got to be able to pivot.
Rigidity can be a real liability
Yeah, you'll get stuck.
in a political landscape
Mhm.
that's constantly shifting.
You got to be like a chameleon.
Yeah, you got to blend in.
Adapt to your surroundings.
So it's about being strategic,
Yeah.
being opportunistic,
Mm-hmm.
seizing those moments when the tide turns in your favor.
Absolutely. You got to ride that wave.
It's not just about holding onto your principles.
Right.
It's about knowing how to apply them effectively
In a complex.
in a complex and dynamic environment.
Yeah. The world's not black and white.
No, it's a lot of gray.
Lots of shades of gray.
So the source ends on this note of cautious optimism.
Cautious optimism. Okay.
They acknowledge the immense challenges,
Right.
but they also see potential for the right to gain influence
Okay.
as long as they approach it
Yeah.
with patience,
Mm-hmm.
strategic thinking,
Right.
and a willingness to adapt.
So it's not about giving up.
No,
It's about finding a new way forward.
exactly. It's not about surrendering or losing hope.
Right.
It's about finding those new and innovative ways to engage
Mm-hmm.
within a system that might feel stacked against you.
It's about working smart, not just hard.
Yeah, and it's about recognizing
Mm-hmm.
that change is often gradual,
Right.
not revolutionary.
It's about those subtle shifts in the tide that eventually reshape the entire landscape.
And sometimes it's about knowing when to step back
Okay.
and let events unfold
Mm.
rather than trying to force the issue.
Having the wisdom to choose your battles,
Yes.
recognizing that the most effective strategy
Mm.
might be to wait for the right opportunity.
That takes discipline.
It does, yes.
So much discipline.
It's not easy to sit back and wait.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface here.
Yeah, there's so much more to think about.
When it comes to like power and influence and how different groups
Mm-hmm.
navigate these systems that maybe don't always
Yeah.
align with their values.
Exactly. And what's so interesting about this Peasant Revolts document
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
it doesn't give you easy answers
Right.
or like simplistic solutions.
Isn't that a how-to guide?
No, it's not. It really acknowledges the complexity
Hmm.
and grapples with those tough questions.
And it does it all through this lens of the modern right wing.
Right, which I think adds another layer.
Yeah.
Because they're not like one big group.
No, they're not a monolith
There's so much diversity of thought.
within that movement.
Exactly. And the source really captures that tension.
Yeah.
Especially around this question of like,
Yeah.
how do you engage with systems
Right.
you see as flawed?
Do you work within them,
Yeah,
hoping to change them gradually, or
Yeah.
do you just reject them outright?
right. And risk being completely marginalized.
And that whole case study of Elon Musk
Oh, yeah.
really brought that dilemma to life.
Yeah, he was seen as this potential ally,
Yeah.
someone who wasn't afraid to challenge the norms.
To speak his mind.
But then his comments on immigration,
Mm-hmm.
especially about American workers,
Yeah.
really sparked this backlash.
It revealed those deeper fractures.
Right. It felt like a betrayal.
Yeah.
Like he broke this unspoken agreement.
And it highlights this key point from the source.
Okay.
Aligning yourself with the wrong people,
Even if they're powerful,
even if they seem powerful.
can actually set you back.
Big time.
Right. It gives you this false sense of hope
Mm-hmm.
that just leads to disillusionment and infighting.
So what are the takeaways here?
Yeah. What does it all mean?
If we zoom out a bit,
Right.
what does it mean for anyone who feels like their voice isn't heard?
Yeah.
Like their values aren't reflected in the systems that govern their lives?
That's a question a lot of people are asking.
I think the source offers some valuable insights.
Even if you don't agree with every single point.
Absolutely. It underscores the importance of strategic thinking,
Right.
understanding the dynamics of power, and recognizing that influence can be exerted in ways that don't always involve, like, holding the reins directly.
Right. You don't have to be in charge to make a difference.
It's about being smart,
Yeah.
being adaptable, being persistent.
Knowing when to push and when to pull back,
Yeah.
when to speak up and when to just listen.
And it's about building genuine alliances.
Right. Not just transactional ones.
Finding that common ground that unites people.
Even across those ideological divides.
Because ultimately change happens when people come together.
Right. Not when they just retreat into their echo chambers.
Which brings us back to that final question.
Yeah, that's a big one.
What does effective ethical influence look like?
In a world where your beliefs might clash.
With those in power.
Yeah. How do you make a difference when it feels like the system is against you?
I think the answer lies in understanding that influence is multifaceted.
Okay.
It's not just about winning elections or controlling institutions.
Right, it's bigger than that.
It's about shaping narratives,
Yeah.
shifting perceptions, planting those seeds of change.
It might take years to bloom.
It's about having faith in the power of ideas,
Yeah.
the courage to challenge the status quo,
Absolutely.
the willingness to engage in those difficult conversations,
Even when they're uncomfortable.
even when they're contentious.
Because that's how we grow.
And it's about recognizing that change is a process,
Right.
not an event.
It's about those small steps.
Yeah, those little victories.
The subtle shifts that eventually reshape everything.
This has been such a thought-provoking deep dive.
I've really enjoyed it.
And I hope it sparked some ideas for you too.
Yeah. What are the systems you operate in?
Where do you see opportunities for change?
How can you use your skills and perspectives to make a difference?
Keep those questions in mind as you navigate the complexities of your world,
Because we all have a role to play in shaping the future.
even if it's not always obvious.
Even if it feels small.
Thanks for joining us on this journey of discovery.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time,
Yeah?
keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the conversation going.